Happy March, besties, and welcome to another TBR Jar video where these cutie little prompts are going to help me choose what I'm going to be reading for the month of March. I'm so excited to do this video. I always love doing the TBR Jar video just to see what I end up getting for my prompts and what books I end up picking. But the only downside to it is that it's difficult to read all of them, for me to read all of the books that I end up choosing, just because I'm more of a slow reader. So it's frustrating when I don't end up reading all of the books that I chose for that month, but that's okay. They go right back on the shelf and they have another chance to be chosen for the next month. And it's definitely not something where I just don't want to read that book and I put it back on the shelf. It's just there's not enough time in the day for me to read all these books. I wish there were, but there's not, at least not right now. So with that being said, I did put back some of the books that I had pulled for my TBR for February that I didn't get a chance to read. So you'll see that The Fine Print is back on the shelf, and By a Thread by Lucy Score is back on the shelf, and Caraval is back on the shelf. My book club didn't end up reading Caraval during February, but we are going to be reading it in March. Like, for sure we are going to be reading it in March. Honestly, I think some of us or all of us were in a bit of a reading slump, so we just kind of wanted to take a break for a month. So we are for sure going to be reading Caraval. So I'm just going to set that aside as one of the books that we're going to be reading. So with that being said, I think I'm going to choose 5 prompts because that's going to be our 6th book. So with that being said, let's choose our first prompt, a book that involves family. So and I have some books over here too, but I don't think any of those involve family. Okay, The Summer of Broken Rules. This does involve family, most definitely. I know this one does because it revolves around one main character who lost her sister, but her family always has this tradition of going to Martha's Vineyard, which sounds so fancy. Her and her family will always go somewhere together and do like a yearly trip, I think, and they have like this game that their whole family plays every year, and it's this whole big thing. And the main character, she kind of has shut everyone out since her sister died, and so she is trying to put herself back out there and get back connected with her family and friends, I think, and all that stuff. And so she goes with her family, they go up to Martha's Vineyard, and then there's also a wedding that's happening, I believe, and I think she's a part of it, if not one of the bridesmaids. So it's a little bit of that, it's a little bit of the wedding, and then it's a little bit of this whole family trip and the big game that they all play together. I've heard that it's really, really good. I've heard a lot of good things about this book, and I've been meaning to read it, just haven't gotten to it yet. So I think I'm gonna choose this one. The game that they played is Assassin. I don't know if any of you have played it before. I haven't played it before, so I don't really know much about it, but it's a traditional Fox family game that they play, and it takes place during the week of wedding festivities. Claire always loved the game. Claire is the sister that passed away, and Meredith is determined to honor her legacy. So the annual family vacation at Martha's Vineyard, it revolves around family, like it says. So I think this is a perfect book to choose for our first prompt. Okay, next prompt. A retelling. Okay, I don't have the physical copy yet, but I do want to get the Entangled with Fae series. I've talked about it plenty of times on this channel before. If you haven't heard of it, it's princess fairy tale retellings, and the first few is Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, Little Mermaid, and Snow White. But this one I think follows the huntsman from Snow White, so it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily a princess retelling because it mostly focuses on the huntsman. So that's the next book in the Entangled with Fae series. I've been meaning to get to that book because there's 5 books in the series. The 5th one is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and then I'll be all caught up. The Sleeping Beauty retelling came out within the last year, so I'm not too far behind, but I do want to catch up, and that's one of the series that I'm trying to finish. So I'm gonna choose A Taste of Poison for my next book, and we'll just pretend that we put it on this pile, but that is the next book I'm choosing. And next one, a book involving travel. So, book involving travel. Okay, I think I'm gonna choose this one. I feel like this involves travel because the main character, Piper, is forced by her dad to go to this small town in Washington. It's called Westport, Washington, and she's forced to go there, her and her sister, and just kind of learn some lessons. It says, Piper is fashionable and influential, and her reputation as a wild child means the paparazzi are constantly on her heels. When too much champagne and an out-of-control rooftop party land Piper in the slammer, her stepfather decides enough is enough, so he cuts her off and sends her and her sister to learn some responsibility running their late father's dive bar in Westport, Washington. I've heard really good things about this one. I've heard that the main female character, Piper, gives off Alexis vibes from Schitt's Creek, and I absolutely love that show, so I'm all for it and all for a cheesy, fun romance. And I've been really meaning to get to this book, so I'm excited to choose It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. Okay, so that's 4 books. I gotta keep remembering that I have one that's on Kindle Unlimited, so one that's an ebook. But next prompt, final prompt actually, is read any book from a series. Okay, I think I'm actually going to re-pick The Fine Print. This is from the Dreamland Billionaire series. I had chosen this one, like I said before, I chose this for my February reads and I didn't end up getting to it, and I really was looking forward to getting to it. So I am going to choose The Fine Print from the Dreamland Billionaire series by Lauren Asher. Lauren Asher is a really popular author and I have yet to read any of her books, and I really want to get started on reading her books, and this one gives off Disneyland, Disney World vibes, and so many love this book. And of course, if you know me, then you know that I love Disney World and just Disney in general, so I definitely want to get to this book. And I'm obsessed with how I showed this last time when I chose it, but if you didn't see that video, first of all, you should go back and watch it, but secondly, I love that it has like all of these different like sketches and designs throughout. They are all different designs like on the start of each chapter. I just like the little cute added design to each chapter, and I like that the like section separators are little castles, and they of course look like straight up the Disney castle. So that's fine. But anyway, I am really excited to read this book. I really want to get to it. So I'm gonna choose The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. Okay, so that is all of the books that we are choosing for the month of March. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let's real quick, one more time, go through all the books that I chose, even though you probably remember all of them. But first things first, Caraval. Oh, and I don't think I like described this one. I did describe it in my last video, but if you haven't seen that one and this is the first video you are watching of mine, if you have not heard of the Caraval trilogy before or the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy before, the Caraval trilogy is like the first trilogy that you're technically supposed to read if you want to read in order, and then the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy is what you read after, because there's one character, well, technically there's 3 characters from this series that are in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, and one person in particular that's in the 3rd book of this series is the main male character in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. I knew going into it that I should read this series first and then the other one if I didn't want any spoilers, because I knew that I would get a spoiler if I read the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy first, but I decided, screw it, I'm just gonna read it anyway. So I read all 3 books in that trilogy because the 3rd book came out, I think at the end of 2022, if I'm not mistaken, or sometime in 2023. But either way, I honestly, time flies. I literally have no idea. Like, time is just, it's non-existent. I read that book and was like obsessed with it like immediately when it came out with 2 of my friends, and we just, that was what sparked like the whole book group in the first place in the book club. But it was a really good trilogy. I loved Once Upon a Broken Heart series, but I hadn't read these books first, and I knew that it was gonna, like, there was something from this series that was gonna be spoiled if I read those books first, but I did it anyway and loved those books, so I want to go back and read this trilogy and just learn more about the main male character in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series. It sucks because he doesn't really come into play until the 3rd book, like I said, of this series. I've heard that it's not as good as the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, but it's okay. I still want to give it a shot. I love the covers of these books too. I think it's so beautiful. This is kind of like, as you can tell kind of from the title, it's like kind of got carnival vibes, but it also kind of sort of gives Hunger Game vibes in a way, because it happens like once a year or once every few years, and you have to be invited into the games, and basically only one person can win of the games. There's a lot of high stakes for the games and everything, and you're kind of in this like certain area. So it gives off like Hunger Game vibes in that way and everything, and with the like high stakes and competing against each other and only having one winner. And I'm assuming that there's like fights to the death and stuff like that, but it's kind of like gives off carnival vibes. But some people when they read this said that it kind of felt like a fever dream when reading it, and just from like some of the descriptions that people gave and stuff, like the non-spoiler descriptions, it really honestly does sound like it'll be a fever dream and kind of be confusing. So I'm nervous about that, and that's part of why I'd been putting it off. But my book club, like I said, chose this book and really wanted to get started on this trilogy. But anyway, so that is a little bit more in depth about what Caraval is about. But that is our first book, so Caraval. Next is It Happened One Summer by K.L. Walther. I honestly don't know how to pronounce her last name. Then is A Taste of Poison by Tassanja Odette, and that is going to be on Kindle Unlimited for me. If you are wanting to read that series, it's all on Kindle Unlimited, so take advantage of that. It's a really good series. And then next is It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. And last but not least is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed. Let me know down below if you did, and if you have read any of these books, what your thoughts are, what your ratings were on them, and what you guys are going to be reading in March or what you're currently reading. I love talking all things books, and I always am checking the comments and commenting back to everyone. So definitely let me know down below what you guys are reading and what you're planning on reading for March, and if you've read any of these books or are going to add them to your physical TBR or your TBR. Make sure to like this video, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you aren't already, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss another video. You can do that by going to my channel, hitting that subscribe button, and then hitting the bell next to it to make sure that you don't miss another video and it notifies you when I release another one. I try to release videos weekly, and I would love for you to join our community that we are forming here on this little corner of the internet. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye!
I can feel the breeze, euphoric delight.